What's up, guys? So one thing I've noticed down in the comments recently is a lot of you are talking about Cerakote. All I hear is Cerakote, Cerakote, Cerakote. So just because of you guys, I am going to try my hand at it. And I already know this is going to be one of my funnest projects yet. I went ahead and bought everything to do the Cerakoting, and I'm going to try it on these triple clamps back here. And from what I've heard, it's pretty similar to powder coating as far as the process, but there's just more prep work involved with it. I've got these triple clamps all smoothed out, and these should look amazing Cerakoted. Since I was doing some grinding and polishing on these triples earlier, I'm gonna have to meticulously clean them before I do any type of coating. So the first step is to clean them with a degreaser and a brush, and then I'm gonna soak them in acetone for 30 minutes. And of course, you always wanna have a test piece. So I'll be testing out the process on this front master cylinder cap. And make sure you stick around for the whole video. I'll be giving it away once it's all finished up. Oh, and in case you didn't notice, I had to pull the lower bearing off the triple clamp. I'll have a video on replacing the steering stem bearings coming up pretty soon. Before I mess around with the triple clamps anymore, I'm going to run through the process on the master cylinder cap. Just going to give it a sand before I start prepping it for Cerakote. I've got this rubber sanding drum that goes on the buffer. Works really well for sanding and smoothing out aluminum. And what this is going to do is remove all the lettering on the master cylinder cap. Going to give it a really cool look. Man, that already looks incredible. I'm tempted to not even Cerakote it. So since I was using grease to sand it, I'm going to have to clean it really well with degreaser and acetone. The next step is to soak the part in acetone for 30 minutes. And what this is going to do is remove any remaining dirt, oil, and grease. Just going to fill up this tub with the acetone. And keep in mind, all the supplies used throughout the video are linked down in the description. As you can imagine, acetone in a plastic tub did not mix very well. Started melting the plastic, so instead I'm gonna have to use something metal. Alright, so I've had the part soaking for a good 20 or 30 minutes. Just gonna pull it out and let it dry up here on the top of the paint tray. And once it's dry, I'm gonna sandblast it. It's pretty crazy how fast the acetone evaporates off the part, so you definitely don't want to leave acetone out in the open for too long. From here on out, whenever I'm handling the part, I'll be wearing a set of powder-free gloves, and that'll keep the oil in my skin from getting on the part, which could affect the finish. So here's a new addition to the shop. Just picked up a cheap little Harbor Freight sandblaster, and this thing will work perfect for the little amount that I'll use it. And what I've gotten here is an aluminum oxide media, and you definitely want to make sure you have a clean abrasive to start with. If there's any oil or grease in the abrasive, that'll contaminate the part as well. So this is my first time using the cabinet. I'll let you know how it performs. So the blaster seemed to work pretty well. Got a nice even finish on the cover. Now I'm just gonna blow it off with the air compressor and run it through a gas out in the oven. Alright, what I'm gonna do is run the cap through the oven for 60 minutes at 300 degrees. And what this is gonna do is burn off any remaining oil and solvents on the part. So as you can imagine, the part has to be extremely clean for the Cerakoting to stick. So the 60 minutes is up on this piece. I'm gonna pull it out and check it over. All right, what I'm looking for here is any oil residue coming to the surface. If anything shows up, I'll have to re-soak it in acetone and gas it out in the oven once again. Looks like it's good to go, and it's all ready to spray out. So here are the Cerakote materials. This is the color, which is a burnt bronze, and I'll be mixing it with the catalyst here in the cylinder. And the color will have to be shaken up pretty good before I do any mixing. All right, I've got the color all shaken up, and for this test project, I'm just gonna mix up a little bit of material. And now I've gotta figure out at what ratio to mix it. Here's a little chart that Cerakote provides for the mixture ratio. I'm gonna go with middle of the road, a satin finish, so 18:1 ratio. And then down here is a chart that gives an estimate of how much material you'll need. This project is gonna be pretty small, so I'm just gonna use 18 cc's of Cerakote to 1 cc of hardener. And one thing to keep in mind is the shelf life on these materials once they're mixed is only about 2 hours. So you gotta knock the project out pretty quick. I'm gonna start by pouring in 18 cc's of the color first. And then next up is 1 cc of the catalyst. Now to mix up the materials, I'm just gonna place a glove, make sure it's a powder-free glove, over the top of the cylinder, and then just shake it up a bunch. The Cerakote is all mixed up and ready to go into the gun. The gun I'm using is actually an airbrush, which will work great on the smaller parts I'm coating. And you'll definitely want to use a regulator for this project. I'll put the links to where you can buy all of these supplies down in the description. So for you guys that are gonna try Cerakoting, make sure you click those links and get the stuff you need. As soon as I pour the Cerakote into the gun, I'll be all ready to spray. This is gonna be way more material than I'll actually need. But you know what? Pretty sure I got the ratios right, so that's all that matters. So they recommend filling the container up only about half the way. And then as far as the pressure goes, Cerakote recommends spraying at 20 to 25 psi. Before I do any spraying on the part, I'm gonna test the flow on the cardboard here. So I've got it set right at 20 psi, and I'm gonna adjust the nozzle here until I got the flow right where I want it. It's a little too dry right there. A little bit more. From what I've read, you want to be able to wet the part with one pass. If you go too light, you'll end up with a sandpaper-like finish. So right about there looks good. So usually you'd want to spray the most difficult areas of the part first. However, with this cap, it's pretty simple, so it doesn't really matter where I start. I should probably cover up this dirt bike stand so I don't paint that as well. It's a little too dry, so I'm going to open that valve up a little bit more. And actually with this part, I'm going to spray the edges of it first. Looks like I've got a pretty even coat on here. Basically you want enough of a coat to where it's still wet when it goes in the oven. Into the oven we go. Before I put the part in the oven, I'll let it sit for about 15 minutes. And now that it's in, I'm gonna bake it at 300 degrees for a full hour. I cannot wait to see the result of this. An hour has gone by with a cap in the oven. I'm gonna pull this thing out, let it cool down, and then check it out. Dang, that is a super cool color. I cannot wait to get the triple clamps looking like that. So the cover's all cooled off and it turned out awesome. Really happy with this color. But upon closer inspection, looks like there's a bit of a hazy look up on top here. And I'm thinking I didn't get a thick enough coat on there. So I'll have to keep that in mind on the triple clamps. It is time to move on to the triple clamps. I'm gonna clean up this top clamp with the greaser and a brush. And just like the master cylinder cap, I'm gonna soak the triple clamp in acetone for 30 minutes. Alright, just gonna follow the same process with this one. Pull it out of the acetone, let it dry, sandblast it, and then gas it off in the oven. At this point, I've got the top triple clamp completely sandblasted and it's hanging from the rack now. Just got this bolt threaded in, securing the wire into place. The next step is to gas it out in the oven at 300 degrees for a full hour. I'm all set up to spray the top triple clamp. Got to make sure I spray it on a little bit thicker this time, but definitely not to the point where it's going to drool. I ended up doing 2 coats on this triple clamp just to make sure I've got enough coverage. So I started on the bottom side, hit all those tight crevices, and then moved on to the top side. I think I've got it pretty good right now. Just gonna wait 15 minutes and then toss it in the oven. All right guys, it is the moment of truth. I am so excited to see how this top triple clamp turned out. You better believe it, I am using Scotch-Brite pads as oven mitts. All right, I've got the bottom triple clamp all cleaned up and it's been through the acetone soak and it's ready for sandblasting. So there's certain areas on this triple clamp that I don't want to sandblast, namely the stem here where the lower bearing sits. So I'm gonna mask that off with high heat masking tape. That way it holds up in the oven as well. One cool thing about Cerakoting that I haven't talked about yet is that it doesn't leave much of a surface buildup like powder coating. The layer is very, very thin. So things like threads and the fork mounting surface do not need to be masked off for Cerakoting. However, just to be cautious, I'm gonna mask off the surface where the bottom steering stem bearing sits. Well guys, I've got the bottom triple clamp all gassed out, sandblasted, and ready to spray. Let's knock it out. I've got a couple solid coats on the bottom triple clamp, but the next time I spray Cerakote, I'll definitely need a better setup than this. It is so tough trying to spray in all those tight areas with carts on either side and it being so close to the ground, but it worked for the time being. Couple more minutes and this thing will be ready to go into the oven. Just pulled the bottom triple clamp out of the oven and man does this thing ever look good. Gonna wait for it to cool down and then peel off the masking tape and take a closer look at it. Well guys, that is it. Triple clamps are all finished up, and for my first go around, I am more than stoked with the finish. Such a cool process and result. I guess only time will tell to see how they hold up. For this top triple clamp, I'm going to put the emblem back on. Just going to use some double-sided tape on it and stick it right back in the center where it belongs. That is such a clean look. Now your reward for watching the whole video is I'll be giving away this master cylinder cap to one of you guys. Hold on a second. All you have to do to enter to win this cap is to comment down below whether you prefer 2-stroke or 4-stroke. Let the debate begin. And then I'm gonna go through and pick one of you guys at random, and this cap will be yours. You can use it for decoration or put it on your bike. It'll work on any Honda 96 the current that has a hydraulic front brake system. Well, this was a good time. I want to say thank you for joining me on this little journey, and I would appreciate it if I get all of you to give that like button a little tap. I will see you in an upcoming video.